recording, right? Check. Well, I have to do this first.
Recursion.
Yeah, that's always trippy about OBS.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's not on.
Monster.
I thought it was the break. Oh, it's because they're muted.
Okay. I was like, that's all just subs.
Because it was just going. Yeah, it was just going to the send.
Music these days. Experiment would be to stick people like in like a noise-proof chamber, like a sensory deprivation chamber, with only that. I bet it would do something really weird to them. After 15 minutes, they started.
All right, I'm just trying to close everything because like my Ableton has been crashing, so I'm gonna close everything to make sure everything's working. All right. What's up, guys? My name's Kenro. I'm one of the training coordinators here at Pro. Today, I'm gonna be talking about a couple things. One of the main things I'm going to be talking about is parallel compression, what it's used for, and how you can utilize it a lot for your mixes. So I'm going to start with this kind of like tune that I made. This kind of tune that I made a few hours ago. It's just a drum, a kick snare, and a bass line. I wanted to add like some synths to it, just because. So that you can kind of like hear more stuff, but like I had no time, so it's just gonna be just this thing. So we're just gonna work with like this loop right here, and then I'm gonna kind of like show you guys like the power of parallel compression, how you can use it in your mix. So if you're doing some like minimalistic like bass music and stuff like that, like this kind of tune is kind of you can already call this like a section of a song. And you really one thing that you notice right away is the kicks and the snares, although they're there, they're not quite overpowering your mix. Most of what you're hearing is just bass line. And what parallel compression mostly is used for is to create some sort of depth to your drums specifically. Give it a little bit more low ends, maybe give it a little bit more high ends and stuff like that. So the way parallel compression works is that you have your complete dry signal. For example, this drums, it's a completely dry signal. I'm getting a little bit of phasing there. Give me a sec, actually. All right. I'm just gonna do this. Rename this into kick. Take the output from resampling, record, and then record. That, and then we'll just take that first little kick hit right there and call that our kick. All right, there you go. Now I can.
Actually, since you did that kind of quick, do you mind like going into a little more depth?
So basically, what I did was I took resampling is basically what's coming out of your master output, and what I did is I'm just recording what's coming out of my master output so that I can just grab the kick. And the reason why I'm doing this is if you listen to the kick specifically, you're hearing a little bit of some phasing issues in there. Sorry. If you can hear, the kicks are not similar. It's kind of changing. And so what I want to do is I want to get rid. Yeah, it's like some of them are do something like that.
Yeah, I hear that. The second kick is not like the first.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm recording just one kick, and I'm just gonna repeat that one kick over and over and over and over again, so that the kicks are similar to each other. So now I recorded one kick, and it's gonna sound like this. So now if I just repeat that over and over and over, now the kick's gonna be the same over and over and over. So what I'm gonna do now from here is I'm gonna copy my drums, so I'm just gonna copy that. Before I do that, since I've copied it from a sampling and my drums is like at -3 dB here, I'm gonna actually increase this by 3 decibels, just like that. And then I'm gonna copy this here. I'm just gonna work with an audio file, and then I'm gonna repeat that just like that. And now I can mute this entire group here, and enable that. Consolidate this. Consolidate meaning I'm just taking that like chopped up piece and turning into an entire audio file. And so now it should sound like this. The kicks are all similar now. So I have that. And then I have to change my bass side chain from that group into that kick that I just made right there. All right, that sounds good. But if you listen to the kick and the snare specifically, if you listen to it just by itself, it sounds good, but if you listen to it with the bass, it's kind of like it's very puny. It's there, it's punching, but it's kind of puny. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it a little bit more depth, give it maybe a little bit more high end, maybe a little bit more low end. And so with what I'm going to be using to achieve this is this thing called parallel compression. And a lot of times producers, when they do parallel compression, they think, oh, I'm going to get my drum bus, I'm going to put my compression here. I'm using Live 8 compressor. I'm going to compress it. Kind of like that, quite a lot, like that. Maybe give it a lot of release time, give it like a lot of look ahead, and then I'm just gonna keep my dry and wet to like 50%. And that's parallel compression right there. Yeah, that's parallel compression, but what does it really do? Now I'm gonna solo the drums. A-Bing it kind of it actually sounds as if the one without the compressor sounds better than the one with the compressor. So what does it really do? It just made your drum sound a little bit less in volume. So that's why I don't do this technique. What I usually do is I create a return track. And I put that return track as a pre-EQ instead of a post-EQ or a post-fader. So for everybody, a pre-fader and post-fader, what it means is that when I'm changing the volume, I'm putting basically the return track either before the fader or after the fader. So that's why it's called pre or post. When you're putting it pre-fader, what it means is even if I'm increasing the volume here and I decrease the entire volume of my drums, it's still playing. It's playing through my return channel right here. Now it's gone. Oh, sorry about that. Now I can put this to 0, and I can bring this up. Now I'm doubling my drums. So that's what a pre-fader is. What a post-fader is now when I'm doing this, and I delete and I get rid of the volume here. It's also not sending it to the return anymore too. So that's just all you need to learn about pre and post-fader. So I'm gonna put it
decaying twice as quickly.
Huh?
Is it fair to say that it's decaying twice as quickly with the same fader?
It's not really because it's exponential.
Oh, so I think it's
or logarithmic.
Yeah, would it be like? Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
what does the return track refer to?
Huh?
What do you mean when you say the return track?
So it's kind of like in an analog sense. For example, when you're looking at this mixer, what a return, an instant return is basically is you're trying to send like let's say one of your channels. You have your music is coming in. You have a through, and then you have your output, right?
Yeah.
Your through, you kind of like bring that to you connect that to, let's say, an effect or something, and then you bring it back to another channel into this. So that's basically what a return is. That one channel is your return channel.
So I have music, I put it into one channel and I do effects on it, and then I take the output of that channel, which was doing the effects, and I plug that into.
Well, you get the completely dry signal first, right? Coming from an input, for example, and then you're sending it out to an effects rack.
Yeah.
Like a hardware effects rack.
Okay.
And then that hardware effects rack is then plugged back into the the mixer. And where you plug that in is considered your return channel.
Okay, I get you.
So that's what it is. And you can connect it through either pre or post fader. Pre-fader meaning that whatever volume adjustments you do on your whatever that your original channel is, whatever it is that your return track is taking, it's always gonna be the same volume, no matter what volume your original track is.
Yeah.
A post fader is that when you're moving the volume, for example, of your original channel, you're also changing however much you're sending to your return channel.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between pre and post. So I'm gonna keep it at pre, and I'm gonna put. There's a couple different types of parallel compression out there. One of the most famous ones that a lot of mixing engineers use is this idea called the New York style parallel compression. I don't know why it's called the New York style parallel compression, but it's just called that way. And what it generally is it's an EQ and a compressor. What they do is they get the EQ, they turn it into a notch filter, they put the Q level way up, and then they put it in the middle. So you're basically taking away all the mid-range, and you're only getting the high end and the low end. And whenever I do this specifically, I don't necessarily just do this. What I do is I always lower my high ends, so it kind of looks like that, and that's what my style of a New York style parallel compression is. And then you put the compressor on top of it. And then you put the threshold pretty low, ratio pretty high, like 4 or something like that. Look ahead at 10. Release, you keep it high around like 200-300 milliseconds. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want the compressor to always be triggering. You don't ever want the compressor to stop compressing the sound. You always want to keep it compressing. And now you want to keep your dry wet up to 100 now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly bring up the compression volume up here, which is this is my send. This controls how much volume I'm sending to my return track. So I'm gonna play just the drums and the parallel compression, and I'm gonna slowly bring up my the send. And immediately you can hear the volume kind of increases, but what's really nice about what's happening is that you're getting a lot more depth from your drums, for example. So this is without parallel compression. This is with. Very subtle difference, but it's definitely there, especially when I bring the bass back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring the bass back and I'm gonna start playing. I'm gonna AV it with and without. This is with, without, with, without. It sounds very puny without it, and it sounds a lot more powerful, especially that bass that you're getting with it. So, but be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to overdo your parallel compression, definitely, for sure. Just because when you overdo it, it just sounds distorted. It sounds way too boomy. You might start clipping your master channel, which I am actually doing right now. So inevitably, what I'm gonna probably do here is I'm probably just gonna lower the volume of everything by like 3 decibels or something.
Yeah, that's something that took me a while to figure out. If you just highlight multiple tracks and like do an operation on one, it'll just do it on all of them. Like I don't know why that didn't like click for me earlier. Like I remember I used to close things like one at a time until I just realized I could just like highlight everything and then like,
that takes so long.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why. Like it only occurred to me then. But.
Yeah. One thing to note as well is I'm cutting a lot of the high ends in here too. If I get rid of this, actually, you'll hear the high ends pop a lot more, and you'll see. The high ends pop a lot more. And although that could sound good in your mix, I generally don't like doing that because it can get really out of control. Your high ends specifically. Your low ends, it's all right. I mean, more low ends is kind of better anyway for your mix because it sounds... generally when you're creating a track and you listen to it and you listen to someone else's track and you're like, damn, that track sounds way better than mine. Generally it's because they have more low ends than your track. That's mostly it. I'm not saying your track sucks. I'm just saying it's definitely a matter of mixing your tracks, and usually when a track is more powerful than your track, it's probably because they have way more low ends in it than you do. So that's why I usually just do this. This is one type of parallel compression. Like I said, it's called the New York style parallel compression. Another type of parallel compression.
Wait, sorry, could you just go over again how you did the New York style parallel compression? I kind of just on that
Sure.
part.
Yeah. So what I did was I just created a return track in Ableton. You can do this just by right-clicking, inserting a return track, or you can do Alt Command T if you're on Mac, and I think it's Command Shift or Control Alt T if you're on Windows. Sorry, I've never produced on Windows. Or I have, but it's so long ago. But yeah. And then it will show up right above your master track, and then you just put an EQ.
Okay.
You cut away most of the mid-range. You only want to affect the low ends and the high ends,
Yeah.
and then you put the compressor on top of it.
Could you solo the output that's like just coming out of the return?
Sure,
Just to see, like-
that's a good thing to do.
So this is like only.
Only the compressed thing.
Yeah.
So you're playing both of those on top of each other.
Yes.
Earlier.
That's why it's called parallel compression, because you're playing the dry signal on top of the compressed signal, or your wet signal.
Interesting.
And what he was saying earlier with like the dry wet knob, it's like it's not necessarily the same thing. Just turning the dry wet to 50% and having like half dry, half wet signal, because
And-
you get like both the amplitude change and like the addition of a compressed signal when you have the return
Yeah.
track.
The one thing though is that when you're working, especially when you're already in your mixing process and you do something like this, one thing that tends to happen is your drums tend to overpower everything. That's okay. Just lower your volume of your drums and your parallel compression bus. You can even increase your bass bus. So what I can do is I can increase my bass bus again by 3 dB, and I'll play everything again. And if you notice, the gain reduction never goes all the way to 0. It's always there. Or it actually kind of goes a little bit, so I can... So yeah, that's the New York style parallel compression. And it really helps a lot in your mixes. It's like one of my favorite ways of like when I'm mixing to try out is if I listen to the entire track and I'm like, does the drums sound okay? Hi-hats sound okay. Usually I do it more on the kicks than the hi-hats. I wouldn't worry about too much of the toms and stuff like that. But those three specifically, because those are the ones that affect a lot in your mix. Sometimes I would do it for like a bass line that's got some really nice like high end to it. Like for example, this bass line that I made. It's got a lot of low ends, but it has a lot of sizzle in the high ends. So I can also put that into my parallel compression if I want to. And you just get like an overwhelming like amount of low end and like sizzle in there. And then I bring back the drums. But when you do this, obviously I'm like already kind of like pushing my bass way up. So I'd probably just do it like very minimalistically, like right there.
Oh, it actually wasn't timed like for a little notification.
Yeah, but I wouldn't really use it for like synths, for example. It would just make the synth sound really weird and muddy. I would just use it in like specific things. Like I said, drums is like probably the most used application for this. And that's really what it is. There's another type of parallel compression. This is more for like a mastering. I guess in your mastering stage you can do this. You can do this in your mixing stage too. But this is now, it's the same idea. You create a return track. You put an EQ and a compression on top of it as well. And for this time, what I would do with this is I would just only have the low ends. I'm only going to compress the low ends. So I'm going to say everything below 150 hertz, I'm going to start compressing. And I'm probably going to compress this way harder than I was compressing the other one. Like there, look ahead 10 milliseconds, high release again. And then let's put that in pre-fader. And now I'm gonna get rid of this, and I'm gonna start slowly increase this. I'm just gonna play the drums. Immediately you get that pumping in the low ends. So you just get like a much stronger low ends. This is nice if you have already like created your kicks and snares, for example, to have really nice high ends, and you don't want to like increase more of the sizzle in there. So it's a good way to do it. And of course, there's the other way around where you just compress the high ends. I'm not gonna do an example of that just because I rarely use it. I actually never use it. Some people might use it. I don't know why they would use it. I think these are the two most used type of parallel compression. You can also just like do a complete dry signal without an EQ, and then compress that and add that to your mix. But I don't see the reason why you would do that, other than just bringing up the entire loudness of the entire track in the mastering perspective, for example. But I think the best way to do like parallel compression would be through like the New York style parallel compression, which is this. It just kind of like livens up your mix a lot. I guess that's what I would use it for. So let's kind of like do a key map on this. Do an A/B on your New York style parallel compression and your low end just parallel compression. I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press it to a letter M, press this in M again, and then yeah. So now when I press the button M, it switches between A and B. So I can hear the difference between parallel compression in New York style and the low end. So start with the parallel compression. Oh shit. Okay, there you go. Let's start with the New York style, and then we'll A to B it with a low end. That's it. And this is just the low end. The lows kind of sound similar, very similar. Maybe it's a little bit less on the low end, just because I'm not sending it as much as the other on the New York style. But you can definitely hear a drastic change on the high end specifically. That versus this. The snares specifically, if you listen to the snares. All right. But yeah, that's, I guess, parallel compression. That's how you can kind of like use it in your mix. Beware when you, like I said, when you're using this, not to send too much. One of the biggest things that's going to start occurring is you're going to start clipping your master track, and that could cause some like distortion in there unless you already have your mastering chain. But it's always a good idea to turn off your mastering chain whenever you're in the process of doing your mixing, just because you don't want what's in your master to like affect what you want to hear in your mix, especially if you're trying to send out your entire track to a different mastering engineer for them to master, and you're not the one mastering it. You want to make sure that everything sounds good in the mix before you master it, so that when you send it to the mastering engineer, it sounds good. Because sometimes you can go really deep into your mastering process, that your song sounds really good with your mastering chain, but then you turn that off and you send it over to your mastering engineer, and everything just sounds like crap. And that's not something you want to happen, I guess. Yeah. Any other questions so far? Yep.
So is the difference between like regular parallel processing and, I mean, where is it? Parallel compression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just the difference is like the high end?
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the difference, really. How much of the high end or low end. At the same time, you can see like the low ends here. It's one is steeper than the other. The slope.
Mm-hmm.
So it could affect some stuff. It could not.
There's also the option of just like not putting an EQ.
Yeah.
Having parallel. I mean, occasionally I do that for vocals, but it's a lot of times it's because I already like low cut the vocals anyway. So it's, I mean, in essence, it is like EQing part of it out, but that is a really common technique for like mixing vocals, is, you know, because you want it to sound relatively equal in amplitude throughout the song, right? Despite the singer's kind of like undulations and things like that. But it's oftentimes you can get a lot of distortion if you only compress like the just like the original vocal recording.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people do is they just have like a really overly compressed version of their vocal recording kind of and just lower the volume and play it with the original. And that way it's almost like the highly compressed one is like filling in the gaps,
Yeah.
but you still get like a lot of the dynamic range of the original recording.
Yeah, essentially it's kind of like if your track is, if you don't want to compress the whole thing, you just compress parts of it through a return track.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
just mix the
Right.
two.
Exactly.
I guess this is one thing I've been wanting to try, so I'm gonna start trying it out now. That's and what it is really essentially is just a parallel compression, but it's not just parallel compression. You're basically doing a parallel compression with reverb on top of it. So what I would do is I would put like an EQ, do the same thing, but now instead I'm just gonna do get rid of all the low ends and just have like the high ends maybe above like around here. Put a reverb on it, turn off everything, put the decay time quite high, dry wet all the way to 100. Can mess around with the parameters once you're there. Pre-delay, I want that pretty high up. And then put a compressor on top of it as well. I don't really know how this is gonna sound like. I've never tried this before, and this is just something that I've always wanted to try. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna get rid of all this, and I'm gonna start increasing it, which is it's in C. So if you don't know how to send stuff in Ableton, basically every time you create a new return track, it kind of lines up in here. So this is your A, B, C, which is here your A, B, and C. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to increase it. That's actually really, really good. I actually really, really, really like that.
Yeah, you hear that echo. Like,
Yeah, it's because it adds this type of like noise almost to your mix. As long as you're not overdoing it, like I put mine on like I'm gonna put it to pre. I'm putting mine to like negative 35 dB or something. It actually sounds really nice because it doesn't quite muddy up your mix because it's super compressed, it's super low volume, but it gives you this kind of noise, almost like a white noise.
yeah.
That's kind of similar to the sounds that's coming out of your actual tracks, which is pretty good, especially if you're doing it with drums. And let's hear what it's doing just by itself. So the reverb is just doing that. I actually really like that. I'm gonna add just the low end compression. Actually, I'm gonna do the high end too. I actually really like that. I think that sounds really, really good. So what I did was I also added just the low end compression on this.
So kind
There
of
you
what are
can
the
hear it.
parameters of the compressor that you're using? Like what are you
Oh,
setting for like
yeah.
the, I don't know,
So that's a good question actually, because I kind of just breezed through that. But the reason why I'm using Ableton Live 8's compressor is because of these three parameters, FF1, FF2, and FB. I don't really know exactly what they are. It's called feed forward models, is what FF means. But essentially, FF1 specifically has this really nice, like this compression distortion that it does, that gets rid of a lot of clicks. But at the same time, it's also very like heavy compression. And which is why I really like it, especially in parallel compression, because you want it to be as heavy as you can when you're doing parallel compression, and then just kind of like slowly ease into it, like slowly add stuff to the parallel compression, like give it more volume. But you don't want it to be like, you don't want it to overpower, but at the same time you don't want it to be just like it sounds like there's no compression in there at all, so that it kind of don't get anything.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't change much. So that's the reason why I'm using Live 8 compressor. You can use any compressors you want, definitely. The glue compressor is a good one. I would probably use the FabFilter compressor as well. But I just, I don't know, I've been quite obsessed with the Live 8 compressor lately. I use it for my side chains as well right here. Yeah, I just think I like it. I personally think it's one of my favorite compressors out there. Yeah.
So we can all notice, obviously, like the stuff coming out of the return track is a lot quieter than the input. How much of that is a function of that noise getting compressed by just having a really high ratio, and how much of it is you getting like the output gain knob and like tweaking that down?
It's, you don't really want to think of it as much of ratios. You want to think of it as much of flavors, like how much flavor, like if you're cooking, for example, how much salt you want to put in there, how much pepper you want to put in there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just like, think of it as your salt, or your salt would be your pre, how much you're sending to the return, and your pepper would be like the output of the actual compressor.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just like messing around with the parameters until you get like a sound that you personally think sounds good for you.
Also,
in
you
your
can have-
case, were you modulating both though, like the output gain separately?
You
from
can,
the compression?
you can, but I don't see the need to do that. I
Okay.
usually would just mess around with the send parameter.
Use only the actual compression itself to bring the sound down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also if you have like makeup gain on, then theoretically you're kind of eliminating that like
Yes.
final amplitude
Yeah.
element, and like you're presumably only getting the effects of the compression,
Okay.
which is kind of the whole point of the.
Which is also the reason why I kept makeup on
Yeah, so
every
if you
single
look at
compressor. If you look at the top right, there's a makeup gain there, and I always keep it on. Basically, what it does is for every decibel that I'm decreasing on the original sound with the compression, I'm increasing the output of that compressor by that amount of level, so that it keeps the level similar.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it's doing. Yeah. There's that, I guess. And also I want to talk about a couple things you could do with your mixing and stuff like that. This works a lot if I had a synth in here. I didn't quite make one, but let's make a really simple one for now. Let's use operator. Just use like a something like that, I guess. Where's my envelope? Oh, there it is.
I feel like this is one of those like expectation versus reality like memes where it's like what you think producing is, and then it's like just listening to the final track, and then it's like reality is just like playing the same like sound over again.
True. I'm gonna keep it like
I
that.
actually think you're doing that as one of the next memes, but I need to get some feedback on what the different pictures would be like for instance, so like keep that
Okay.
seed growing in your mind.
In the meantime, does anyone have any questions about like compression in general? Like I realize parallel compression is like kind of one step, I guess, beyond regular
If you know what
compression.
compression is, then you're hopelessly lost.
Let's do that. And I guess this is one thing I want to talk about is the idea of like doing like downsampling or bit reduction to your sound to give it a little bit more flavor, but then getting rid of all that harsh noises that your Redux would, for example, give to your sound. So I have this sound, for example.
It's like more Kenro as the dial progresses.
So you kind of have this sound. It sounds really, really nice. The sound sounds nice, I guess. I can do some. I don't know. I don't want to deal with this, but like I'm just gonna do something similar. Something simple. I'm I'm gonna mute this. Add some saturation to it so it makes it sound louder, way much more louder. But immediately you can notice that it sounds like kind of crap because of what the Redux does to it almost. It sounds really, 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 like the high end kind of pierces a lot. You can fix this with an EQ, yes. But the EQ kind of like does a lot of destruction to your sound more than it fixes stuff. So one thing I generally like doing to fix this is to add basically noise to your sound. This is kind of like what dithering is.
We're getting into that now.
It's basically what dithering is. You just
open.
but
Getting really political. Dithering.
But then you keep the volume like super, super low. And you notice if I group this, for example, and add an EQ onto this. See all those little, I'm gonna get rid of this first. See all those little things up here? That's the aliasing that the Redux has been doing. And I'm gonna try to get rid of that by adding noise to it. By adding noise basically, so I'm gonna it's off, that's why that's not doing anything. Mother. And if you notice, it kind of got masked by that white noise right there. Now you have the problem of having there being a white noise there though. But it actually kind of it's too loud. That's probably where I would want to keep it. So I still keep the sound of that little alias sound, but it doesn't sound as bad as the other. So it sounds like versus it's not as harsh to your ears. Basically, what's happening is the white noise is masking most of these high frequencies that this sound has. So this has that really piercing high frequency. And what the noise does is kind of masks that so that you don't hear it as much. So that's without it. That's with it. Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, you get kind of like a white noise problem now. But sometimes white noise is nice to have in your mixes anyway, because it kind of fills the space that sometimes you want to have if you're working with a very simple track, like for example this one. If I don't have the white noise, it kind of sounds very plain, but with the white noise, it kind of sounds a little bit more, it gives it a little bit more space in it. And then you can kind of you can also EQ the white noise so it doesn't hurt as much in your ears. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some. Compare that to that piercing, really high end, like 10K range is gone now because of this white noise. And it doesn't take up a lot in your mix anyway. It's just there, that's sitting there. What you can do too is you can have your own separate, when you have this, you can have your own separate compressor in there. I'm just gonna copy it. It doesn't matter if it's compressing it twice. And I'm just gonna keep the release high up. Something like that. So it's it sounds like it's almost swooping into the next kick, or the next snare, or not. No, it's just a kick. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. That's like one of the things I just wanted to talk about, just because I think it's a really cool trick to like create, like, especially if you have a really like strong sound and you kind of want to mask a little bit of the bad frequencies of that sound, you can just add noise to make it sound better, just so that you mask the sound. This also works really well when you're dealing with creating super sauce. So let's make some super sauce. Not super sauce like it's a super sauce like you put in your food, but super saw waves. Who the fuck are you? All right, let's use Serum, because Serum has that unison that I really freaking love. Is that you just bring up the detune, or the unison automatically you have like a super saw because this is already a saw wave. Super saw. Ta-da. It sounds kind of crap because, like what I said, it's a super saw. It has a lot of really high frequencies that kind of sounds like terrible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this. Not duplicate. I'm going to add a new chain here. Create a new chain. And in a new chain, I'm going to add an operator. Operator that's just generating white noise. There you go. And now if I'm gonna play, like especially if you're doing high, super high ones. As I bring the noise up a little bit, you're getting rid of a lot of, you're not getting rid, but you're masking a lot of the high frequency kind of like of the super saw. Now the super saw sounds like you're putting a low pass filter on it without actually putting a low pass filter on it. Obviously the white noise kind of sounds like crap, but you kind of get the idea. And this is the reason why you see a lot of people when they're generating super saws, they usually add like a noise aspect to it as well. So let's grab like a whatever noise. Like, this is one of the best things in Serum, by the way, is the noise oscillator. They have some really nice noises in there. So I'm gonna.
Another good option is pinch.
This one's a good one. So you're getting rid of a lot. You're not getting rid, but you're masking a lot of that high-end frequencies that are there when you're creating super saws.
And you prefer that to just simply filtering it because it takes
If
up
you
space?
So that you're not really destroying the sound, because when you put a filter on it, now you're gone. Now the sound is destroyed. It sounds like you actually put a filter on it, and sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it's way too destructive to your sound.
Okay.
And it's a
like
lot of things.
Destructive, not like in an opinionated sense, but like in a, like quite literally, you have taken some aspect out of the sound that's like you can't really add back in without adding another oscillator, making those frequencies.
Yeah, pretty much. And so something like that, you basically just destroy the sound. That doesn't mean that like it sounds bad anymore. It just means that like, yeah, you're getting rid of a lot of frequencies that you can't really get back anymore, just like what Darvesh said. And by adding a noise, you kind of like get rid of that idea. And then one thing you can do is after you put the noise, now you can put your filter on it too. And then you don't have to actually put a filter. You can just put an EQ to get rid of a lot of the annoying frequencies. Like for example, simple EQ like that. That already sounds really good right there. Yeah, I guess that's all it is. But that's essentially what dithering is, if you've always wondered what dithering is. But that's...
Or if you guys just hit export and you're like, I don't give a fuck.
But yeah, it's pretty much what it is. And that's kind of like the stuff that I wanted to talk to today. Oh, before I do anything, I'm gonna try to add the parallel compression to this. too much, but yeah, that sounds pretty decent actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
It could be a future based song.
Yeah, just more of those water drop noises, man.
No, it's you're missing something.
Like in an arrhythmic fashion.
Nope. There you go.
There
Or you can even do like some crazy shit. That's not crazy. Or whatever. I hate making future-based tracks. Sorry.
I don't know, dude. I like some of the songwriting. So that's like really nice.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
but it was like a. Do you guys know Casbo?
Yeah.
Casbo. I like Casbo, but like listening to his album, it felt like I was listening to like 13 of like the same song.
That's pretty
it was like excellently written and produced, but I was just like, there's no variety here.
I get you.
But I feel like I would like it in a live setting.
I liked it a lot more than, I mean, his old stuff was also good, but that was a lot more reliant on like the super sauce sound, whereas his new stuff is a bit, it feels a
It was
little
very,
more
yeah, and
to
also
me.
like I felt like he picked his vocalist
How do you
very
spell his
well.
name?
Yeah.
Casbo?
Like Kasbo.
Casbo.
He's on Odessa's label.
Yeah.
I forget what the label's called.
Oh.
It's like something family or future.
Alright.
No.
But-
Foreign Family?
Foreign family. That's what it is.
Anyway, again, let's key map all this. I'm gonna add this to M2. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna A/B the entire thing with the parallel compression, the 3 different types of parallel compression on 3 different types of sounds, and with and without it, just so you guys can hear the final product of what we did today. So this is without anything. Yeah, wowzers. Oh, wowzers. Who says that again? You suck. Oh, you suck at producing.
Oh, when he said that, I was thinking of like, what's the blonde actor? He's like, wow, like.
Oh, yeah.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah, no, you suck at producing. He says like, oh, wowzers.
Yeah,
All right, here we
I
go.
just thought it was Owen Wilson.
But anyway, so here's.
One movie where it's like his face and then it's
Yeah.
like put like with a high degree of transparency over a background with like stars and stuff.
This is dry, and this is with the parallel compression.
The quotes.
Let's try that again. Without. With. Alright.
Can you see what's on the returns?
Yeah, sure. So this one is my New York style compression, which is this little weird EQ here with a notch and a little bit of a lower high end with a compressor. You have just the low end, and you have the one with the fancy one with the reverb.
But on the reverb, why do you turn off like diffusion and early reflections?
So it's just basically just a regular reverb.
But doesn't the regular reverb have diffusion and early?
Yes. Yeah, that's like a room reverb, like an actual room reverb, like what you hear now, like the reverb of my voice. Listen to the sound of my voice.
No. This room is pretty like.
It's pretty dry. It's sound treated anyway. Yeah, so I can't really do anything. But basically, it doesn't cut anything. No low end cuts, no high end cuts. It doesn't have some sort of filtering. It doesn't have some chorusing. I'm just getting rid of all that. Just so that's just kind of, it just like sounds like the original sound with like a tail. Meh. Any other questions?
These are good questions.
Yeah. Some decent questions.
Wow. All right.
Wowzers. Some good questions.
Wow.
Oh, wowzers.
Wow, question mark.
Yeah, y'all should like look at that guy. Like his tutorials aren't really the best tutorials out there, but he sounds so funny when
What's
he's
his
like
name?
teaching. You suck at producing.
You suck at producing.
Yeah.
It's literally just the channel name.
Well, it's pretty. I mean,
Well, it's actually-
they're not that technical, but I think
Yeah.
they're actually really useful for getting people to like understand. Like, 'cause
Yeah,
he has
yeah.
like his weird metaphors. And
Let's
stuff.
you
I think
suck
it's a great teaching tool.
at producing. Let's watch some of his videos so you guys kind of understand. Okay, here it is.
Zoom in here on the first. Hi, I'm wonder about you stuck in sound design. Beautiful woman Steve Doodoo has created one of the most amazing synths of all time, Sweet CERN. CERN's capacity for making wobs, wump-wumps, yoinks, and winky-dinks make it one of my favorite synths ever. But one area where CERN is a little bit... we got there, but let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like without any of CERN's effects on it. Oh, Jesus. Okay, just put that away. I'm gonna go ahead
let's go back,
and first hear the sound we're gonna be making today. Oh, wowzers.
Alright. Yeah, I just wanted to say oh wowzers.
It's not that bad of a synth.
Yeah, it's alright. It's very simple. It's a very simple one. It's
Yeah,
just FM
He has
synthesis.
this kind of like vacant like look in his eyes too.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to end the meeting there. Oh, I fucking didn't record anything?
Rip.
Oh, motherfucker. Well, I guess we have audio recording.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
I'll